Experts are warning Australians to stay safe at the beach this summer, especially at unpatrolled beaches. And joining me live is UNSW's Sydney surf scientist, Professor Rob Brander. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. Australia has sadly reported its highest number of drowning deaths on record last summer. 145 people died, with alcohol being a factor in more than a quarter. Your research shows that of the coastal drownings that occurred last year, 76% occurred more than 1 kilometre away from the nearest lifeguard service and outside patrol times. You can't patrol every beach, so what do you do here?
Well, that's the problem, and it's the biggest challenge we have in terms of beach safety is that, we say swim between the red and yellow flags, and many people do, most people do, but when a lot of people go on holiday up the north or south coast, a lot of the beaches they're staying at are completely unpatrolled. So when there are drownings, and tragically there probably will be some more drownings this summer, we have to give them more than swim between the flags, because we found that people were there because at these beaches, because it was close to their accommodation, they wanted a quiet beach. They weren't going to jump in their car and drive 20 kilometers to the nearest patrolled beach. So we need to come up with another message. And we think that message is a message that Surf Life Saving Australia launched a few years ago that didn't really get the publicity it deserved. And that was this concept called the think line, that if you go to a beach, any beach, whether it's patrolled or not, you need to stop and think when you hit the beach, and you think about safety. And you think, are the waves too big for me today? Are there any rip currents? Do I know what a rip current is? If I was to get in trouble, or somebody was to get into trouble, what would you do? What would your plan be? Is there a flotation device on the beach? It's almost like we don't cross the road without looking both ways. And when we go to the beach, we should always stop and think about beach safety.
No, I mean, it makes sense. The swim between the flags message, that's been drilled into us for decades. But as you say, do we need to shift the messaging, considering we are seeing a record amount of drownings?
Well, I think we continue with the swim between the flags message, but we surveyed 500 beachgoers on unpatrolled beaches, and 96% of them knew about the flags, and most of them knew the beach wasn't lifeguarded. And actually, most of them were quite infrequent beachgoers and not great swimmers, but they all intended to go in the water. So if they're not going to listen to the swim between the flags message, or it's impractical for them to do that, then there has to be another message. And I think the think line sounds simple, but it's the next step. And it needs to be promoted so that it really becomes second nature when you go to the beach.
You're known as Dr. Rip. Is a big part of the issue not being able to identify coastal rips? I mean, should children be taught about rips at school, at swimming lessons? How do we make sure that that is a part of everyday life in Australia to help save lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say most of those drownings on unpatrolled beaches are happening due to rip currents. People get stuck in a rip. So educating people about rips is difficult, at least in terms of teaching them how to spot them, but we can certainly get kids to understand, or anyone, adults, what rips are. I mean, that's step one, is to understand that rips exist. They're strong, narrow flows that take people offshore pretty quickly, and that they should be thinking about them. And if they don't know how to spot them, well, there are resources available, but if you don't know what a rip is and how to spot it, you really don't want to go beyond your waist. And there are programs in schools. Kids get it. Kids are like sponges, particularly primary school kids. But certainly not every school gets that information. This
increase in drownings, it is quite concerning, isn't it? With the research that you've conducted over the past year, are there any particular hotspots in terms of location and beaches that have really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's clusters of areas. We call them hotspot drowning locations. For example, the Byron Bay region, Coffs Harbour region, the South Coast region. But overall, I mean, there's drownings scattered up and down the coast. And that's because our beaches, pretty much most of our open ocean beaches are surf beaches. So they've got lots of waves and lots of rip currents. And regardless of whether it's patrolled or not, those rip currents are going to get you in trouble.
One last one, Professor. If someone does have a holiday accommodation close to a beach that is not patrolled, is there any way for people to find out information about that particular beach that they want to visit?
Yeah, there is an app. Surf Life Saving has an app called Beach Safe that's free to download, and it will tell you what your nearest beaches are. It will tell you if they're patrolled or unpatrolled, but it will also give you information on waves and tides and conditions. So it's quite a useful thing to look at on the day, and that'll give you an overview of whether it's safe or not in terms of what the waves are doing. Absolutely. So that's a good one. There's a few websites out there, scienceofthesurf.com, ripsafety.com, that have a lot of information, including videos about rip currents.
And also, I guess, staying on top of the weather would probably be a good one as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with rip currents, they occur on beautiful days when there's not much wind. The waves aren't particularly big, but they're still flowing fast. And because those are the days when people go to the beach and they're going to go in the water. So it's something to remember that you can get these things on beautiful days. It's not just the big wave, rainy days where the conditions are going to be nasty. Conditions can be dangerous on perfect days.
Well, it's definitely that time of year when we need to think about it. Professor Rob Brander, thanks so much for your time today.
No, thank you.